Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live kids class for ages for the middle school to high school grade range. We are here with Susan Trencansky from Curriculum Fix, and she is going to be guiding us through drawing poetry. I'd love to hear where you guys are joining us from. I am joining you from Arizona, and Susan, I think you said you were joining from New England. It
I
is
am.
about the same temperature in both places. I feel like it's cold, and Susan says that she feels like she's getting a summer blast.
Yeah.
So
For Rhode
please go
Island,
ahead and
it's
share in the
pretty warm.
comments
Yeah.
where you are joining us from and how hot it is today. If you guys haven't had a chance to download the student worksheet, don't worry. Susan has you guys covered. She's going to be guiding you guys through that. So all you need is your pencils and your colored pencils or crayons and some paper to be able to do this class. So let me know if you guys have all those things ready so that we can be able to get started. Susan, I'd love to hear a little bit about you and Curriculum Fix.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So I taught middle school, 5th through 8th grade for 29 years. And then I worked mostly in independent schools. And when my youngest child graduated, I decided I was going to graduate too. And so I'm a writer and I love curriculum development and I really enjoy working with students, but I wanted to do that in a way that was going to allow me to reach a lot more students with the kind of curriculum that I love to develop. So I formed my own company, Curriculum Fix, last fall, right about this time. And it's been a blast. And I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of homeschoolers and a lot of teachers in both public and private schools who are trying to incorporate more student-led learning and more project-based learning. So it's been a blast. I'm glad everyone could come today and hang out and have some fun.
Okay, I think that we're ready to get started. I see that we have two people live with us right now. So as you guys filter in, just go ahead and say hi in the comments. Don't be shy.
Awesome. Great.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to the screen share.
Perfect. Awesome. So hopefully everyone can now see, and if you can't, just let Amelia know. The Leaves by Hilda Conkling, which is the first poem on your worksheet. Amelia, can they unmute and share if they wanted to, if we wanted to do some reading out loud?
No, but they can share in the comments. So it
Oh,
looks like we
perfect.
have Melanie Romero that is joining us. Hi.
Oh, great. Hi. So I'm just going to ask you to just start off by going ahead and reading the poem silently to yourself on the screen. Okay, hopefully that's enough time for everyone. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a moment to think about how we read poetry, right? A lot of times we're like, oh, we read poetry, with our eyeballs, right? That's how we read poetry. But actually, it's just a little bit more complicated than that, right? In that, a lot of times people just tend to stop at the end of the line when they read. So I'm going to read a few lines aloud. It might start something like, in my apple orchard, in the oldest tree, fall has hidden golden leaves. I looked into the hollow and saw no apples, only leaves with frost on them. So oftentimes when we're reading poetry in our brain likes to stop at the end of the line, right? But that's not really how you're meant to read poetry. It's just how our brain likes to read poetry. So we're going to go ahead and take a minute now on your page if you've got it. If you don't have your page printed, remember, you can just go ahead and look on the screen and circle these things in your mind. We're going to go ahead and circle anything that you see that is an end mark. So that would be a period, a question mark, or an exclamation point. And you probably have talked about end marks in your ELA learning, right? Your English language learning. So go ahead and just take a minute on your sheet or just in your mind when you're looking at the poem to circle anything that is an end mark. Hopefully you're going to notice that there are only two end marks in the whole poem, right? There's one after leaves at the end of the third line, and then there's not another end mark, which is also a period, until the very, very last line of the poem, right? So hopefully you got both of those circled. And then we're going to call those hard stops, right? You might not have heard this expression unless maybe you have taken a theater class. And in theater, you call something a hard stop when you just stop saying things, right? And you leave a long pause after it. Um, Conversely, commas or other kinds of punctuation marks are called soft stops because we're just going to pause when we get there. So a hard stop, like a period, exclamation point, or a question mark, it's a hard stop, and you're leaving sort of a bigger space afterward, right? But a soft stop, like a comma, or in this case, we have the dot, dot, dot. You might know those are called ellipses, right? We're just going to pause there. We're not meant to leave a lot of airtime. So you can go ahead and just underline any time that you see a comma or an ellipsis, right? And on either in your brain from looking at the poem or right on the poem itself on your paper. All right, hopefully that was enough time. So you're going to notice there's a comma after apples on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line. And then there is a comma after tilings on the 7th line. And then you have a series of the 3 ellipses on the 8th, 9th lines. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read the poem out loud as it should be read. Hopefully your brain has already corrected it and we're no longer stopping at the last line. So here it goes. Leaves by Hilda Conkling. In my apple orchard in the oldest tree fall has hidden golden leaves. I looked into the hollow and saw no apples, only leaves with frost on them like marble tilings, like jeweled tables. Yet there was no gold, no marble, only leaves covered with frost that sparkled the way my thought told me. Awesome. I hope that's how you read it in your brain too. So if you look at the very bottom of the first page, so I don't know if Amelia, we can scroll that up at all, or I have to scroll up on my end, maybe it looks like. Oh, it's all about me. Oh, I have control. Cool. All right, great. You're going to see there are a couple of questions. I just want you to think to yourself, what do you think the poet is talking about in the poem? What clues did you use to figure out your meaning? So what do you think the poet is talking about in the poem? And what clues did you use to figure out the meaning? And you can go ahead and pop that in the chat if you like. If you want to go ahead and pop your thoughts in the chat, that would be so fun. If not, don't worry. This could be one of those poems where there's not a lot of hidden meaning going on, right? Like Hilda, the poet, is out in the apple orchard, right? Oh, I love it. So it's like one of our participants says that frost making the apple leaves look like gold and fancy things. Yeah, right? And so you might have noticed that, especially this time of year, depending upon where you live, right? Or in a couple of weeks when it starts to get frosty on the ground, right? That the frost can have really lovely, decorative, intricate patterns as it solidifies on whatever it happens to be coating, right? And it crystallizes and it looks really beautiful. So good job, whoever R is. So absolutely. And most of us can probably at least relate to this poem in that we probably have been in a place or seen a movie where we've encountered frost, right? We've seen maybe our car window frosted over in the morning, and you've noticed the sort of spider webby patterns, right? And the way that the light reflects off them. And that's just what the poet is talking about. And hopefully you've all had some experience with that. So if you flip to the next page, which I'm going to do here too, we're going to talk a little bit about figurative language. And I recognize that for a few of you, figurative language might be something new that you haven't encountered before. And for others of you, it's going to be old hat. You're like, oh yeah, I know figurative language. And they're bought the t-shirt on that. So no matter where you are, it's always good to review, especially in September when our summer brains might still be around, right? So we're just going to take a look at 3 different types of figurative language today: simile, metaphor, and personification. So if you already know these 3 and you're like, oh yeah, I totally have heard about these, maybe you could just give us a little like thumbs up, a little yay in the comments. If they're new to you, you could just write new. Otherwise, I'm not that that's going to change how we're going to talk about them today, because we're still going to review them for everyone, right? And just because it's always good to review. So you might already know that a simile is just a direct comparison of 2 unlike things that uses like or as. I always think of it in terms of like, those are the easy ones to find because you can just scan the page and see if you find the word like or find the word as, right? So it might sound something similar to, the cars looked like ants on the highway from the plane, right? And so cars are like ants. Or you could say, the cars scurried as ants do along the ground, right? And so I looked for the word as, and I'm like, ooh, cars are moving as ants do. And that would tell me about a simile. I could turn that into a metaphor, which is the next one, by just taking away the like and the as, right? Because a metaphor is a direct comparison of unlike things that doesn't use either of those. So it might sound like the cars were ants as they drove down the highway, right? So same thing, same comparison, just simile is going to stick in either a like or an as, and metaphor is not going to have that. It's just going to say it is that thing, or another form of the verb to be, right? The final one is personification. And this is when you give human traits to anything non-human. And I'm not talking like I'm watching television and there's a teacup singing, that's not really how that works. It's like the thing isn't necessarily doing it. Like you might have a dog, right? And the dog is talking and the dog is being characterized in that way. It's not personification because it's just a character. Where that looks like what you might see when you encounter that in a poem or in a book that you read, right? It's going to be giving something that really is non-human, character traits that are human, but only implies that they're doing that. They're not really doing that, right? So if I said the wind whistled through the trees, the wind would not be literally walking through the trees whistling, right? And he's like, hey, I'm the wind. Right? That's not how that would look. It would just that the wind sounds like it's whistling, which is a human trait, right? Or I could say something like, the sunshine lazily dappled the leaves on the apple trees, right? The sunshine is not lazy, right? It just looks maybe from the perspective of the person describing it as though it's just sort of filtering down in a lazy way, right? So you might have encountered those before. We're going to be looking for them in the next step. Once I get this to scroll, we're going to be looking for those in our poem. So if we go ahead and we look back at the Hilda Conkling poem, you can quietly read it to yourself again. And just look, do we see any examples of simile, metaphor, or personification. Hopefully, you are noticing that there are a couple, right? So, oldest tree would be an example, could be an example of personification, right? It's not the best, right? Nobody's going to like win a Pulitzer for it or anything, but it's not a bad example, right? Those trees can be older, right? But when we're talking about the oldest tree, we might think, well, oh, it's got the characteristics of being like elderly or ancient or wise or any of the sort of things that are implied by that, right? Ooh, I see our like marble tilings and like jeweled tables. They're simile for sure. Absolutely, they are. Did anybody find any other either personification or simile going on in here? I'll give you another one. I'll go ahead and highlight it. Is fall creeping around the orchard like, "Mwahahaha, I'm going to hide this golden leaf," right? No, fall is not doing that, right? Like fall's got stuff to do, right? It's not hanging out in your orchard, like hiding stuff, right? So that would be a great example of personification. Also, if we go all the way to the bottom, um, the idea of your thoughts telling you things. Now, I can make like a little internal family systems joke here for those of you who might have already taken a psychology course, right? So our thoughts tell us stuff, but not really. It's like your thought isn't in your brain, like, hey, I got to tell you that's sparkling, right? So that could be a good example of personification. For those of you who might know about other types of figurative language, you probably caught quite a few examples of alliteration in this poem, which is just that use of the beginning sounds, right, repeated in the line. So, like fall has hidden, right? The H and the H would be an example of alliteration. So, if you were looking out for that and you caught that, good job, you. All right, cool. So, we're going to move on to the next page. So, if you have the packet, go ahead and move right on to our next poem. And I'm just going to go ahead and read it out loud because it's a long one. And I'll scroll as I go. So if you don't have it printed out, you can follow along. So, arithmetic is where numbers fly like pigeons in and out of your head. Arithmetic tells you how many you lose or win if you know how many you had before you lost or won. Arithmetic is 7-Eleven, all good children go to heaven, or 5-6, bundle of sticks. Arithmetic is numbers you squeeze from your head to your hand to your pencil to your paper till you get the answer. Arithmetic is where the answer is right and everything is nice and you can look out the window and see the blue sky, or the answer is wrong and you have to start all over again and try and see how it comes out this time. If you take a number and double it again, and then double it a few more times, the number gets bigger and bigger and goes higher and higher, and only arithmetic can tell you what the number is when you decide to quit doubling. Arithmetic is where you have to multiply and you carry the multiplication table in your head and hope you won't lose it. If you have 2 animal crackers, one good and one bad, and you eat one and a striped zebra with streaks all over him eats the other, how many animal crackers will you have if somebody offers you 5, 6, 7, and you say no, 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 and you say nay, 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 and you say nix, nix, nix? If your mother asked or if you asked your mother for 1 fried egg for breakfast and she gives you 2 fried eggs and you eat both of them, who is better in arithmetic, you or your mother? So that's one of my favorite free verse poems. It makes me laugh every time. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We are, Amelia, I'm noticing we're at 3:19. Do we have a hard stop at 3:30?
We have about 10 minutes left, and if we go over a few minutes with questions, that's fine.
Perfect. Awesome. So I hope you noticed that there was a lot of figurative language in that poem. There were numerous similes. There were a number of metaphors, all about arithmetic, right? And there was some nice personification in there too, right? You probably noticed that. But we're going to move ahead and we're going to talk about a concept. Um, so we're going to talk about this term on page number 4 called anchor images. Okay. So an anchor image is just a word or phrase that captures your imagination and helps. Oh, look at that. This is why you can't always proofread your own work effectively. Helps you form an image in your mind. It often includes figurative language, which is why we reviewed figurative language first, right? So if I go back and I look at the poem, an anchor image that always really sticks out to me when I read that is numbers flying like pigeons in and out of my head. So I could say numbers, it's not capitalized. I could do numbers fly like pigeons, right? And hopefully you know now that that is a simile, right? So right now, take a couple minutes, and I'm going to put the poem back up. And if you've got your printout, you can go ahead and just circle images that really appeal to you, that you think are really fun, right? That you can really see in your brain when you read it. Go ahead and circle those on your poem. If you don't have your poem printed out, that's okay, because I'm going to scroll through it, and you can go ahead and write a few down on the piece of paper that you have, or just if you don't have the piece of paper with you, maybe you'll just remember a couple that hopefully you have some paper, because we're going to draw in a couple of minutes. Okay, awesome. So hopefully everyone is able to circle at least 3 anchor images to have fun drawing today. 5 could be great. If you have at least 3, that's so great. And you're welcome to use mine if you like numbers flying like pigeons. I love that one. I also like the multiplication table, like falling out of someone's head, because that's how I always felt it did with my head. I would always be like, it was in there and then it fell out, right? So now what we're going to do is, now we get to do the fun part. We get to do some drawing. So now you can go ahead, and on the very last page, page 5 of your packet, you're going to see there's a big box. And in that box, you're going to go ahead and draw a picture that includes the 3 to 5 anchor image you identified in some way that depicts the figurative language you found, right? So I like the numbers flying like pigeons. So I might decide that I'm going to start by actually drawing pigeons or numbers with like pigeon wings on them, right? Maybe I would, draw a multiplication table that's been thrown on the ground and all the numbers are all over everywhere, right? Or maybe I would, draw some eggs and a question mark, right? Fried eggs and a question mark above, if that was an image that I really liked. So we're going to go ahead, and we can go ahead and take the next 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll all have fun sketching a little bit. I'll show you my example in a second. And again, you don't have to be a great artist to do this. There is a reason why I am not an art teacher, and you're going to see it in a minute. So, they kind of look more like butterflies or angels and pigeons, but I'm doing my best. Okay. I'll show you mine, although it's a little bit light. Maybe I'll draw over it with a darker, because I didn't get stuck with pencil to start. But I went with the things that I listed. So I had my multiplication chart on the ground with the numbers off it, and I made fried eggs on a plate, which I'm not gonna lie, it made me a little bit hungry because it is like snack time for me at a day. I always like to have a little snack. I think my fried eggs look kind of like eyeballs. And I also, because I like this idea of 5-6 bundle of sticks, I made my pigeons, which we're all just going to nod up and down and be like, oh, pigeon, that's what those are, pigeons, right? You're going to see I gave them bundles of sticks. So here are my 5-6 pigeons with their bundles of sticks. And there are my fried eggs with the question mark. And then over here, I have my multiplication table with all the numbers falling out. And actually, I could even, if I wanted to, I could even do something fun, like, and have like a person's head. Ooh. All right. There. So I have a person's head, and the multiplication table fell out of their head and onto the ground. And it's sort of like a little collage. If we had more time, we could really go through all the figurative language in the poem, and you can do this all the time to help you better understand a poem at home, right? Or remember a poem. It's a really helpful way if you have a poem that you're really trying to memorize or that you just want to have some fun with. You can pull out that figurative language that really appeals to you and make a fun collage, or even make a painting or a drawing or another piece of artwork as a way to just interact with it and understand it differently. So I hope everyone's having fun coloring theirs. I want to make my plate blue. I think the yellow.
I got colored.
Oh,
I got colored
blue. Nice. My children love to borrow my markers and my colored pencils, so I had to go scrounging. Yeah. Yeah.
I really liked the metaphor of how it feels when you get a math problem correctly, where you get to see the blue sky, and it feels like the heavens open up, that kind of feeling.
It is.
For those
It's
of
that
us who
lovely
struggle with
feeling.
math.
Yeah, for sure. And my dad was a physicist and my mother was a math teacher, so math was big in our house.
Yes.
Like you had to do your math. And math was not for a long time my particular strength. It took me a while to get to that point where I was like, oh, this is what you people have been talking about. All right. Yeah. Does anyone oh, thank you. Someone said I love carrying the multiplication table on your head. Nice. Yeah, I love that. That's a great one, right? Did anyone else have an image that they chose that that I didn't choose, that they just loved and they drew? You can go ahead and pop that in the chat. I'd love to hear about what people drew. And I will say, just while people are drawing and coloring, I have your the emails of your parental units and caregivers. So I will be going ahead and sending you all. I told you in the ad that everyone who attended was going to get a little piece of free curriculum, and so that'll either be the Out of This World poetry activity, or it will be the painting to poetry activity. So you can look
Fun.
for those. Yeah, I can look for those this afternoon. I'll send them right out. And I put in the ad this morning, if anyone caught that in honor of the collaboration between Homeschool Quest and Curriculum Fix. Until the end of the month, I'm just going to give 30% off with the special code Quest exclamation point, which I'll write in the email too. 30% off only homeschool workbooks. So I just added a whole bunch of curriculum in the form of workbooks just designed for homeschoolers. So I got a lot of good feedback about just getting some more independent workbooks out there that people could really enjoy and have fun with, in
And
addition
what
to the
topics?
stuff.
What topics are some of those homeschool
Yeah,
workbooks?
great. So the no home, I call one the no homework project. I might change it to the student led learning project because that's really what it is. I don't believe in homework. I mean, it's science based homework, but so that one is really about designing your own project and then doing research and learning a lot more about either developing a skill or about a topic that you're really interested in. And that's a longer project with a presentation at the end. A shorter version of that project is the Be Brave Research Project. So if you're a middle schooler and you're like, oh, I might be interested in doing some design your own project work, that's a shorter version of that kind of project that you get to choose your topic and then do some research. Um, the out of this world poetry and the painting to poetry, both of those are going to have a lot of activities like what we just did, where you're going to learn a lot more about figurative language, more kinds of figurative language. And there's drawing and project creation with both in one painting. And painting to poetry, actually, or I think it's now artwork to poetry, because I like to encourage kids to make whatever kind of artwork they want. There's a museum visit included in that. So you can either go online to a museum or you can go to a local museum. I also have units that are tight, a little tighter. Like there's a fun activity on gratitude. There's another on goal setting. Um, we're going to be hopefully adding some math and some music this year. Good friends of mine are really interested in doing that. And if you're going to have any questions about any of the units and just want me to walk you through them before you purchase, just shoot me an email, and I'm happy to have that conversation with you, just so that you purchase something that's going to be like fun for you to do and it's going to fit in with what you're interested in learning about, right? So that's all
So I would
on.
love for everyone to share a picture of what they drew in the comments. We'll be watching the comments. Make sure to tag Susan in those. Here's my silly one. I don't know if you can see. It's a pigeon with a little number that's flying through window.
Oh,
And
you're good.
then
Oh,
a
the blue
little
sky. I love the blue
coming out of
sky.
his head. And then he's got the multiplication table that's falling piece by piece out of his head.
Oh, I love it. Oh, so good. Yay. That's so fun.
So I'd love to see what you guys came up with. As you can see, this is about having fun and being able to do something that you're able to have a totally different way of being able to show that you understood the poem and to be able to remember it. So this is going beyond doing copy work. This is something you can do with your kids who are visual and kinesthetic learners. So I hope you guys really enjoyed. And I look forward to having more classes. This week, we're going to be having one on color chromography with Isabella Kelly. So go ahead and check that out. I'm going to put a link to that in the comments. And I look forward to seeing all of you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much, Susan, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And do I have, it was